A title: Historical Trauma. Evelyn Laureano, Executive Director, Neighborhood Self-Help by Older Persons Project, New York, New York.
When we work with elders of color, we have to understand that history of oppression, history of gender roles, how have women been treated in the 40s, 50s, 60s, in their country of origin. What was the role of women, so that they have been marginalized, they may have been oppressed. And this takes on connotations when it comes to elder abuse, because they might not see themselves as abused or victims of domestic violence, because this is life. This is what I'm used to.
Vicki Ybanez, Executive Director, Red Wind Consulting, Incorporated.
Historical trauma is the multi-generational impact from abuses that occurred in Indian country to tribal communities that transpired over the course of many generations. And when I say many generations, we're talking hundreds of years. And one example in particular is the boarding school era. And that was federal policy from the mid-1800s to the mid-1900s. So we have multiple generations that were raised by institutions. So when you think about what you learn from observing your parents and being raised by a family being wrapped around you, that was missing and absent for many generations, not just one generation or two. And as a result of that, we have elders today that have lived in boarding schools and were raised by that. The other thing that was significant about that was about the level of abuses that took place, the high instances of sexual abuse and physical violence that were perpetrated against our Indian children growing up in boarding schools. So we have multiple generations being raised by institutions and multiple generations experiencing that violence. And as we look at how that plays out today, when we open up elder abuse to talk about and work with somebody who is dealing with a current instance of that, we open up those long-term, deep-seated memories that have had very painful effects on that individual.
Sue Hall Dreher, Consultant, formerly Director, Sexual Assault Support Services of Mid-Coast, Maine.
And when we think about particularly older adults, we can look at who's had the experience of historical trauma. Then we look at how many of our children are abused and sexually molested. And then we look at trauma that may happen in interpersonal violence, possibly with other acquaintances. When we look at the healing process for the older adult, all of those pieces of trauma come into play. And what I've observed and experienced is that we try to blame, when an older adult, particularly an older adult, tries to talk to us about what happened, he or she or they may not use the words of sexual assault, but they're describing the impact, they're describing what it means to them, and they're describing their lack of safety. And so as advocates, it's up to us to be assisting, because we're along for the journey. This is their journey. This is their life. To figure out how that works for them now, and what do they want. And unfortunately for many older adults who had a long lifetime of trauma, they may not know what they want or need. Those are foreign words. When we talk about empowerment, the assumption is somebody ever understood or felt that they had personal power before. And so finding their value, and that's both in recognition, response, and respect.
Logos appear. NCALL, www.ncall.us. Terra Nova Films, terranova.org. Funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, Office on Violence Against Women and Elder Justice Initiative. www.justice.gov/elderjustice. A disclaimer. This project was supported by grant number 2014 AXTA K050, awarded by the Office on Violence Against Women and by the Elder Justice Initiative, U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this program are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Justice, Office on Violence Against Women, or the Elder Justice Initiative.